All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight on your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, we've got Evolution of Desire up, which means there's going to be some sexy time with Samo.
All right.
But we're also bringing some relatively new podcasters into this. Not that they're guests of ours or anything. We're bringing up one of their videos.
Yeah.
Uh, and I really like them. They don't have a big following. So if you like what they have to say and what we have to say about it, share us and actually go give them a listen as well. But they're the sex doctors. One's a pretty esteemed urologist, which is the physical side of it.
Yep.
You would go to your urologist, and the other is actually a sex therapist. So, and they're a married couple, even though they have different last names, but it's 2025. So,
Which is why I really like the dynamic there. You have the psychological side of the physiological side of it, and you have a married couple, so they have the personal experience dynamic to it that they bring to it.
mhm.
Um, so it's a really good dynamic. And I also appreciated that it was a really concise video. The video is only what, like 12 minutes long or something like that.
Yeah, they do way better than we do at that.
Yeah,
We're going to take a concise video of theirs and make it long about that.
it's what we do.
Yeah, that's what we do. But so I came across him because the urologist, he's famous for actually advocating for fixing the science on testosterone and cancer and all of these
Hmm.
things because he was kind of the first, he was the pioneer that sparked the studies that basically proved without a doubt almost. I mean, there's always doubt in science, so that's why I say almost, but it's so much almost that it's a without a doubt. Uh, that TRT does not cause prostate cancer or make it, or as they used to say, pouring gasoline on a fire.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because the conventional wisdom out there is still, I think that it does. I
Well,
think
that's
most
because
people
doctors
think,
are we're a litigious society. How about that?
yeah,
We talk
yeah.
about high trust society, low trust societies. We're a litigious society. And that doctor that says, oh, it's okay, and their client
Mhm.
with prostate cancer, it gets worse on its own, is still going to sue the doctor and they're going to bring in the experts, and there's going to be experts on both sides, and the jury is going to be full of people wishing one day that they can sue somebody for millions of dollars, so they're going to give a good payout. That's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Um,
that's one reason medicine is so slow to change, by the way. It's not
yeah.
because we don't have new data. It's because people the standard of care is the least likely to get sued.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So we have been talking kind of around this issue, and we wanted to dive into it a little more giggity. Uh, and this happens to be a really good avenue. Um, but there are some problems with it, which we'll get into after we get started with kind of the introduction to it. If you wanna, where do you
Yeah.
want to start with
Well,
it?
I'm going to start by introing it because we're about a minute and a half into their talk, and they've
Yeah.
already introduced the topic, but she's about to give an analogy about it. So I'll
Hmm.
introduce the topic for them, partly because I will do it in less than a minute and a half, probably, but also they have intro music that they probably paid for,
Hmm.
and that'll get our video struck with a copyright if we play that part of it. So I got to where we're just past that. But no,
Oh,
they're
I
talking.
let me also set up one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is because something we didn't talk about when we showed the clips of Candace Warbach on trigonometry a month or so ago is she has a great saying that I love, but we didn't get into the positives because I we were talking about the things that I disagreed with. But one of the things that's very positive that I really agree with her and I think is a great thing that she advocates is what she calls all day foreplay. Because with women, and we've talked about this in various episodes before,
I'm going to use the word typically in front of you're with women,
typically,
typically.
um,
Yeah. Overlapping
typically,
bell curves
mhm.
and the
As I said, I don't even remember the context, but last time or the time before, it used to be, and I don't know what the numbers are now, but it used to be that approximately 80% of visual pornography was consumed by males, and you flip that, and approximately 80% of literary pornography is consumed by females because females want stories.
Mhm.
And so the all day foreplay is you are telling the story for her. You are constructing the story for her to get her in the mood. Whereas with men, it is kind of a switch. And now Dr. Abraham will address that here uh, in this episode. He actually addresses that a little bit, briefly, but more or less, typically, it's kind of a switch for guys. But with women, it's different. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about here.
Well, yeah, and so we are talking foreplay, and she's about to do an analogy about cars, which I think both of us thought was really
Mhm.
really good. But I remember, I can't remember who told me this. I think it was your brother telling me that what somebody else told him. It was men are like chainsaws, women are, or men are like diesel engines, women are like chainsaws. Once the man's turned on, it's on forever. And women, you got to prime it, you got to get it right, and you may get it started, but it may turn right off. So it's and then you got to pull the lever for it may not turn on again that day.
Make sure you don't throw the chain because, oh boy, are you in danger.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was a pretty good analogy. But okay, so she's about to give her analogy, which is two vehicles. Oh, you know what? She will as soon as I reshare with sound.
Probably a good idea.
Hey, at least we're catching it before we start the video this time. That's an improvement.
People in my therapy room is that when a relationship is new, people kind of oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes walk around pretty fired up. So when they join their partner, they're already like, if we're going to use like a car analogy, they're already like going 25, 30 miles per hour before they even like touch their partner. They're revved up because they know they're going to have sex. That's exciting. So they're already excited. So when they engage in whatever foreplay they do, all they're really doing is taking themselves from like 30 miles per hour to 60, right? They got 30 miles to
Right.
yeah, to rev
Yeah,
up.
the speed limits.
Yeah. And they're exactly. And they're already excited.
And she doesn't say this, but the first thought I had in my head, it was like, yeah, it's like an on-ramp to the freeway.
Yes,
You don't
yes.
just take a 90-degree turn onto the freeway and expect to be okay.
Or if anyone who watches automotive racing, there's a big difference between a standing start and a rolling start. There's a
Mhm.
big difference between that. Um,
But she's
and
just talking about inertia. And the thing about complex
yeah,
systems is the general rules of the world apply to them. This is why I don't like being compared to computers,
yeah,
because
that's a good
computers
point.
are different. That you turn the switch and it turns on, right? Whereas
Yes,
anything in a complex system, whether it's an economic environment, whether it's a human being, whether it's a society, sociology of a people's of a culture, inertia matters. And objects at rest will tend to stay at rest unless you act on them with a force. But if it already has positive inertia, you don't need as much force to get that going. And with this situation, we're talking about internal mental force to be turned on.
yeah,
Okay, I'm going to let her go again.
65 on some roads.
Well, right. And here in Florida, it's even more. Sometimes a little hectic on those interstates. But okay. So, right. So, and when they join each other at like 25 miles per hour or 30 miles per hour, touch feels good already because they're already excited.
Right.
Okay. Now, what happens then as people just sort of relationships age or people get more used to their partner, that automatic 20, 25 mile per hour rev may not be there anymore.
No, they could be at zero.
They could be at zero.
And it takes a lot to get a car moving from zero.
It does.
Yeah.
Now,
That's what you're going to talk to.
Okay, so what I would like to say here, let's go to what I've talked about before, hormonal states, and people talk about love at first sight, but I'm going to go ahead and say
mhm,
lust at first sight,
mhm,
uh, where you just kind of you meet someone new, and the first time you look at each other, you're ready to go.
mhm.
My hypothesis on this, and it fits very well with what they're saying, is because of something in your life, whether it's a biorhythm of some kind, or it's been a while for you, or uh, it has been just just long enough since the last time you've had a sexual relationship that you're just primed for it, and that other person is too. Something about both of your lives has you already pre-sexually primed. And then you look at somebody in that same state with you that has the qualities that you're looking for. And I think possibly a floating in the air pheromone type hormonal transfer that exists that people don't even realize. We register these things. And that is because you're already 65 on the highway when you look at
Yeah.
each other.
So, something to get the on the other side of the spectrum there. So you're talking about what they're talking about, hey, you're already starting at 30. Well, when you're starting at 0, it's because so something I started doing cynically and grumpily that I have been thinking for a while, I need to stop doing that. And my wife, while we were talking about something, said it out loud and it kind of reinforced, yeah, you need to stop doing that, is referring to my quote never ending to-do list. Because when you're an adult, a parent, a homeowner, you know, worker for you, business owner, yeah, there is a to-do list that is never ending because it continually gets added to. That's a lot of stress. That's going to drag you down. That's going to distract you. That's why you're starting it, or one of the reasons you're starting at 0, because you're busy. One of the things
Well, and we
when,
get in mental modes. Like if you're
yes,
sitting down to do your taxes, you have a mental mode that is accounting, taxes, all of this.
mhm,
I need to focus. I need to cut out everything. Maybe you'll notice if people who have a variety of music they listen to, well, even if you have one genre you prefer, you probably have a variety of artists. You have different things you listen to when you're doing different things.
mm.
Like when I'm doing my taxes, that's little Cody Jinks time, right? You know, it just kind of gets me in that way slow enough that I can focus on
Yeah,
on the taxes, but it's raw enough that it kind of has that mood that I'm looking for, and so you'll notice that just pay attention to what music you use in certain situations, and you'll kind of get an idea of what we're talking about here too.
yeah.
Uh, and it's really hard to switch. Some things are easy. I think the lower the cognitive load, like the nice fun young couple relationship where the husband comes up behind the wife while she's doing dishes, gives her a hug and helps with some dishes, and then they get a little frisky. That's low cognitive load, right?
Mhm.
That's something that probably has an easier switch.
Well,
But if you came behind me while I was doing taxes and said, let me take your mind off that, I would still take you up on it, but it would be different than if we like were ready to go.
yes, yes.
All right.
Well, that's exactly it. So when people then find themselves not at 25 anymore, now they're at 0, they join their partner like in the bedroom and they're like at 0, then they start to think something's wrong. Well, what
Well, in modern couples too, because both working, especially with kids and stuff, a lot of times they don't even get together until they're sitting down in bed.
Yes.
They sit down in bed
Yes.
from the separate things they've been doing. One put away one kid, the other put away the other kid. They both just got home from work. They
Mhm.
rushed through getting dinner ready and everything. And they sat down together, and one of them just looks over and says, "Oh, you want to do it?" And the other one's like, "No."
Yep. Yep. And this is one of my favorite parts about uh this little video here, 11 minutes 9 seconds, and this here right at 3 minutes. uh for me, this is if you were going to make a short, this would be it, is because as they're saying, you think, oh gosh, what's wrong? You have ranted before about the awful brain melting things you see on the suburban mom's Facebook page, and you're like, oh,
It's
you
the
know
moms and dads, but it is typically a
yes,
specific group of those
but
two.
but
That is,
w-
yeah.
what you think is quote unquote wrong and why you think is wrong is going to be different between the feminine and the masculine mind. And I love their point here of, as she's about to say in a minute, of uh it's not that there's something wrong, it's welcome to being the owner of a human body.
Yeah, isn't it great, especially as we get older?
Yeah.
what's their partner doing wrong? Is their partner touching them wrong? What's wrong with them? Is their life become too stressful? And why are they at 0?
They're not feeling sexual at that moment.
Right. And they're looking to blame themselves or their partner. But the thing is, their body's just
Yeah,
doing what
exactly.
bodies are designed to do. Bodies aren't designed like, let's say, Mother Nature's idea. they weren't designed to stay at 20 all the time. Bodies can't
All
do
right,
that.
pause it
Right.
there.
That's early.
Well, that's an important thing because
Yes.
that's all hormonal states. Stress
Mm-hmm.
is good for you, but chronic stress. So most of us run around at that 20 or 30 of stress all our lives. We say we're at 80, but it really is like 20 or 30, or you would have died a long time ago. Right?
Exactly. And I
And
know
so, yeah,
when
and
she
that's what kills
says
you slowly.
when she says 20, I know she's referring to her car analogy there, but it also fits perfectly with literally your body at 20 years old is very different from 30, is very different from 40, is very different from 50.
Especially when childbirth is involved, because both the male and the female will have higher and lower libido states based on when the child was born and how it's going. So females typically their libido, and I'm using libido generally. We can get technical on
Yeah.
libido, but this isn't the place for it. We'll use it as a placeholder for a lot of things. It's a
Yes.
hormonal state though. So libido in females tends to drop a certain percentage every time they have a child.
Mm.
And that's not a drop that comes right back up. That is an add-on effect. So one child drops, we'll say this particular female in our example, it drops 10% after the child. That's not too bad because you can still end up having relatively decent sexual match with just a 10% drop. But then child 2 happens and we get a second 10% drop. So now we're at 20% drop. Now we're playing in waters where it starts to get uncomfortable. It's kind of the uncanny valley of our what our relationship used to be, because the male will drop right away when the child is born. And specifically their testosterone will drop. So now we're getting more specific than using the word libido. The testosterone will drop. And that's a great little mechanism in the human body that keeps dad around. Because if your testosterone is still young bull after your child is born, and well, there's a certain amount of time after child is born that mom can't even do anything. And baby needs so much attention that it's not practical for even longer to do anything. Dad's testosterone needs to drop so he can, not be going off and trying to find a new mommy. But also it needs to
pestering
drop.
mommy to hey, let's get started on the next one. No, she needs a minute.
But there's a secondary effect to that too. Dad is also less likely to engage in dangerous behavior.
That's a good point.
Because his testosterone is through the floor. So, I'm going to go out and get in fights with the other apes, and I'm going to jump off a cliff because it's fun. And no, dad all of a sudden has no interest in, dirt biking anymore or something for a little while.
Yeah.
The problem is after about 6 months to a year of that, it starts to rise again in the male. Whereas we got the kind of semi-permanent drop in the female. So there's a thing. Now, right before the female it's about a 3-year cycle or so where the female is going to be like, okay, I'm ready to have a child again, naturally. So we're talking in nature. We're not talking how society does it right now. So we'll go into social roles if we want to later on this. But then she'll have a quick spike, but that's a temporary spike. And that spike hopefully matches the guy getting back to his original levels. And then you have another child. So the average age between children, when it's done naturally, where we don't pre-plan it like we do here in the West, is about 4 years. Because it's 3 years of the baby maturing and mom getting ready for that spike and dad slowly coming back up to his level. And then all of a sudden, it's time to make a baby again. Boom, baby. And then drops. Slowly back up for the man, spike later, boop, another baby until it's not practical.
And for anyone who has had children, they're not self-sufficient, but 3 to 4 years old, they don't need nearly as much attention because they can move around and do
in hunter-gatherer tribes. That's when they start playing together, and there's basically a matriarch that pays attention to bunches of kids at once. Whereas so the mother themselves can actually focus on the new child because remember, humans are grandma making machines. We're dad making machines and grandma making machines because grandma is now responsible for all the little shitlings that are about 4 years old running around.
The other thing I really liked about this section here, from 3 to 4 minutes here, is it made me feel good because it validated something I had been thinking and meaning to say when we had a sexy time with Sam discussion here, is that um I like her point about you're blaming yourself or looking to blame yourself or blame your partner. And a thought I had for a while now is basically when we talk about uh, the intimacy that goes along with sex, and for anyone who has had a long-term partner, you know it is not always the same. And the male mind is going to think, technically, going to think, oh man, that wasn't as good as last time. You know, what did I do wrong? I need to up my game. No. The odds are you didn't quote unquote do as well as last time because of what you did way before you ever got into the bedroom. And that's essentially what she's talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only that, and also, so after we're done with the video analysis itself, I'm going to add something to what they said in a male versus female. It's all day foreplay, like you said, the 5 secret moves or whatever. And notice in the title, it's in bold, turn women on. Because it is about what turns men on versus what turns women on too. So I'm going to add something to the end on that note. So I made a note, remind me to do that in case I forget to look down.
Okay.
But,
excitement, early relationships,
Right.
sex is a big part of that often.
Right. So as the body does naturally what the body's designed to do, which is not stay at 25 or whatever all the time, there's nothing wrong. It's just that now if they start foreplay at 0, it's probably going to feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that's going to send them in a spiral that's probably not going to, it's going to be difficult.
Feel good.
Right.
Yeah. Is this just women who need this or
no, I'd say
are guys always ready?
No. Some guys are always ready.
I'm going to amend that statement to we are always willing.
Yes.
Because sometimes we aren't ready, but there's always that thought in the back of your mind where you're like, oh, when's the next time this is going to happen? She's ready. I'm usually the one that's ready. I'm not ready now, but I better not let her down.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is a point he's about to make.
Oh, I forgot he makes that point.
Yeah.
Oops. Where aren't you going? There we go.
Listen, in my experience, that's a myth, right? Or at least, I mean, of course, there's some examples of that, but I see a lot of guys who feel like they're always supposed to be ready.
Yeah.
Like that's the stereotype.
I think that's
but
right.
They're not.
Right.
They need sometimes a little bit of getting into the mood too.
Right.
And they're not always ready to have sex.
That's right.
And it's okay.
Absolutely, it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's not even
pause it
of
again.
a problem.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I ranted about in our Wheel of Time episode when I was talking about the story beats. In that instance, a literal story, but then also if you're trying to tell a romantic story, either in a book or on film or in real life, you're trying to tell a romantic story to, romance your partner. There are boxes you have to check, and the specifics of those boxes are going to be different for different individuals, right? Because we're different. But generally speaking, what he's talking about is what I said last time, which again, yay for me, the actual renowned doctor here is agreeing with the moronic layman, is men have a checklist too. It's just much shorter and much simpler. But we still have a checklist.
You're talking about for social roles?
I'm talking about.
Oh, no, or for romantic.
I'm talking about for romance specifically, but it also includes social roles. But to his point about being ready, Candace was being somewhat flippant when she said it's a switch for you guys. And compared to most women most of the time, yeah, it is. But it's not exactly a switch. It's more like a dimmer switch, but it just doesn't take that much to get up to full blast. But
Mhm.
you still have to do some
Well,
work.
and it also that depends on age too and testosterone.
Yes.
And so testosterone in our youth helps with that. So even when you're not in the mood, you have this chemical in your body that's that's at a very high amount. You have free testosterone. So free testosterone is the what matters, not total per se. And so you have this free testosterone. It's like natural killer cells in your immune system. You have something ready to go when the time comes. You know, we always complain about stories and, oh, everybody's just ready when the time comes. Well, young men kind of are sometimes
Mhm.
because we have that lovely chemical. So, okay, no, I'm not in the mood, but she's in the mood. Boing. Okay, we're good. Now we talk about 40 years old, ED. How much ED is because I am pressured to be ready right now because I was waiting for her to be ready. And now she actually is this time, but I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And
I was ready the previous 3 nights in a row when I thought something was going to happen and nothing's happening. So now I'm mentally checked out because I'm like, oh, well, I guess we're just not doing this for a while.
yeah,
Oh,
and but
wait,
now
we are?
it's like,
Crap.
okay, we are. So yes, but now I'm pressured. Come on, boy, come on. You can do it. You can do it. You know, this is how they, you know, as I like to quote Sapolsky here because he has a great little thing in one of his speeches. He said, so when we're talking about ED, we have to separate biological ED from psychological ED.
Uh-huh.
And he said, here's an easy way to do it. You can put you know, some stamps, you know, they all connect. Put some stamps around your thing before you go to bed. And if the perforation is broken in the morning, then you know it's psychological because you got a hard on at night.
Hmm.
He said, you know, they have machines for this. You can get your insurance will charge you an arm and a leg for them. Or no, he said, yeah, they have these machines that are super expensive. They can do this with, but you can get a roll of stamps, but the insurance won't reimburse you for the stamps. And so yeah, I mean, it's a big joke, but he's right. If you wake up with
Mhm.
morning wood, but you have ED, it's anxiety. If
That is
if
something you taught me that I did not know because way back in high school health class, we were taught that the reason that happened is you had a full urethra. But explain the nuance there.
a full urethra, okay, no, okay, so yes, you the reason you get what we call morning wood is because the erect penis is a defense against urination because you don't want to urinate while you're having sex, right?
Mhm.
So if you're in the again in the wild, you're trying to do your thing and you have to pee, you have this defense against it because it's not a full urethra, it's a full bladder. But the actual erection itself blocks the urination. That's why it's so hard to go when you have morning wood. First of all, you got to get the right angle so you're leaning against the wall. But then even then you feel like you're forcing it out. And if
Yes.
you really pay attention to it, every guy in the audience that gets morning wood and has trouble peeing with it in the morning, pay attention. You're relaxing against the wall. You're talking to yourself saying, I got to get to work. Relax for a second. And you're already holding your thing anyways because you got to aim it. When you start peeing, notice that there was a moment of relaxation right before.
Mhm.
It's not quite full on wood anymore.
Mhm.
It relaxes to a kind of a partial. And then you start urinating, and it starts with a really thin stream. And as it relaxes more, it gets to be a greater stream.
Yeah. So
Okay, so but the
if
point
you're
of that is though,
thinking, oh, that's just because I have to pee really bad when I wake up. No, no, no. No, that's your body working the way it's supposed to.
well, but also when we're talking about ED, the only thing that matters when it's physiological is the fact that the blood flow is disrupted.
Mhm.
So whether your thingy gets hard because you have to pee, or whether your thingy gets hard because you're aroused, is irrelevant to the fact that your thingy got hard
Physiologically, yeah.
because the blood flow still works. So what we know is the blood flow, the capillaries and the arteries and everything are still open. The spongy tissue is still working. So it's something in your mind that is keeping the willy from getting where, and we actually need a parasympathetic response. We need relaxation to get hard.
Hmm.
And that's one of the ironies because we call it arousal when we do. But actually,
Mhm.
you have to have a mental state where you're comfortable. Whether it's false or not, we don't know, because our brain turns off when we get in that state. But you have to relax. So anxiety is the biggest cause of ED in men. And what, to the point, back to the video, if you feel pressure because you feel like you have to do it and you don't have all that free testosterone floating around to cause the funny, stupid, make you dumb chemicals to flow in your brain, you're going to start thinking about it. You're going to be like, can you get up? Come on, dude. Got to perform, got to perform, got to perform. Okay, let me like kiss her for a while and see if that helps. Maybe it did. Oh, no, it didn't. Oh, it's still not happening. And now you can't get up because now you're nervous as hell. You're sweating and you're not going to perform.
Indicative of being the owner of a human body.
Yeah.
Like, so let's not overreact to it, but there are things to do.
Yeah.
So basically, once Mother Nature has ran her course in your body and you're not automatically revved all the time, then it's time for you to take a more active approach and get yourself to 20 or 25 before you join your partner.
This is the foreplay for the foreplay.
Exactly.
And this is an interesting turn that I did not expect from her, where she's actually talking about it's on you if you're not turned on.
Yes.
To a lot of extent.
Yes.
And I didn't, because this is something you don't see in psychology much. So she must be a little old school, or she's just really cool. But a lot of your affirmative care psychologists would call this victim blaming right now.
Yep.
But she's saying, so her title here is Turn Women On. She's saying, ladies, flick your bean for a second. And, before, not in front of him, obviously, but, hey, yeah, I think he's going to want it later.
I'm not opposed to that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, but it's a thing. Okay, so we haven't done it in a while. We actually have time. We're going to be together later. I don't feel it right now. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to muster it at the time. So you can pre-warm, basically. You can warm yourself up. And it's not just physiological. She's going to talk about the physical touch to yourself and everything. Basically, don't like ping us and shadow ban us, but self-masturbation, to an extent. She does, but at the same time, you talked about romance novels. Why can't, if a female loves romance novels, why can't she get out that romance novel? Or a show they love that really is really made for women, like something like Outlander, right? Which is basically a romance novel on film, and actually I think very well done. I was like, oh, I mean, you might as well have Fabio playing them. It's just that if you have something that turns you on, do it.
And this is the title of this section is Scheduling Sex Can Help Prepare for Foreplay. And that's a very good point, and something that when I was a young fuddy-duddy and thought, oh, that's silly, you don't need to do that, is yeah, you may want everything to be spontaneous, but as she's has laid out, life doesn't work that way. Mother Nature doesn't work that way. So there's nothing wrong with scheduling. So like having a set date night to keep the romance. And so I don't remember who I've heard talk about this and made kind of changed my mind on it of going, oh yeah, you know what? It's because a scheduled date night, I always felt would had the potential to backfire because of the pressure. But this person was making the point, look, the date night, quote unquote, doesn't have to be anything other than sitting down and watching a show you both like together. The point is, it's just the two of you together doing something. And you're going to make sure that at least one night a week, you're always doing that.
Exactly.
I think I've got it.
Yeah.
I think I've got it.
I know it's yeah, and it really works. So basically what that means, this is why it's often a good idea to schedule sex so people know when to do this. But that just means do your own little, I don't know, masturbate without having an orgasm. Watch a little porn, get in the tub and play with the water. Don't have an orgasm necessarily, but get your body going in whatever way.
Yeah.
So that means that what you've done is you've kind of
Go
like
positive again
let
here.
go of the
Yeah,
is-
well, there's also something I want to say on this that might be kind of a buzzkill, but go ahead.
Well, to the point you were making earlier from the male side about is it physiological or psychological, of are you stressed and that's why it's not working, or is there actually a blood flow issue, is something I wish she would have gone into a little more here in this section, is get your body going or your mind going, whichever it is. I mean, they are connected, obviously.
Hmm.
And so, but for some people, it's um one leads the other. So as you were saying, so sit down and watch that, rom-com you love, or that, romantic show, or whatever it is that you really like, you know, you know, pull that book off the shelf that you like. And it's whichever it is, whether it's the physical or the mental, whichever you need, and know yourself enough to know what you need to get it going.
Yeah, well, so the buzzkill is there's so many memes that go around that are like, it's got an obviously tired person or cartoon or whatever on the bottom, and then an excited, happy something on top, and it's implied that it's being sexual, even though it's not always. But it is implied. The whole meme is implied that it's sexual, and it's when she gets home from her girls' night out,
Mhm.
and so it's the obviously tired guy at 3 a.m. when the wife comes home from her girls' night out and she's horny. My thing is, this is the buzzkill part, is what happened on that girls' night out that got her pre-horny for you, and should you be worried?
Well, they have a video for that I haven't watched, but I said, this might be interesting. But what one of the ones
These
that
same
popped
people,
up after I watched, yeah,
these
one of the ones that
okay,
one of the recommended that popped up when I watched this was something about cheating. And so how
okay,
to
I haven't watched that one yet. I
yeah,
focused
it's
most on the testosterone ones because that's why I came here to begin
yeah,
with.
yeah.
Because I mean, I've been exploring it lately because I need to talk to clients about it, and
Hmm.
he's the person who debunked
Hmm.
the giant. They had thousands of people in their study, and I think it was like 4 to 5 on prostate cancer in the two groups, testosterone and no testosterone replacement.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, and of course the naysayer experts would be like, that's a 20% difference. And the other people would say, yeah, but the magnitude, the effect size of this is,
Hmm.
I mean, you could barely drive a mosquito through it. Okay.
Yeah. Um, oh, but so yes, if you don't have a healthy relationship, that could be an issue. And the title is this is how you avoid cheating, have this conversation with your partner. Um, so if you have an unhealthy relationship, that may make you go, hold on a second here, especially if it's always happening. Um, as always, the life lessons can be learned with good country songs. And Midland has a song, cheating songs. She just started liking cheating songs, and I don't know if it's the melody she likes or the cheating. Um, but to a point you've made before, it may be that she got with her girlfriends and they were all griping about their relationships, and it's like, if you're a parent and you're ever worried about am I a good parent or not, and then you go out in public and see other children and go, yeah, my kids aren't that bad.
Yeah, I hope that's it. But, you know, something got the juices going. And, I've been out with the boys
Hmm.
when GNOs come into the club,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of grinding and stuff going on. So there's the other
Yeah.
part of the equation there.
But for the but let's not poo poo on it too much,
Okay, yeah,
because
that was my only negative moment for this
to
for
to
this
to
whole
her
podcast video.
to the point she's making here is, um that might be what it takes to recharge your batteries.
Hmm.
So like, uh I'm kind of an introverted extrovert. I'm primarily introverted. I don't really want to go out. I don't really like being around people, except those times when I do, and I'm like, okay, I actually want to have a meaningful interaction with somebody, or with a social group in a social setting. But then I need some time. I need some time of, you want to go out again tomorrow? No, no, I
Well,
don't.
that's the definition of an introvert. People don't
Yeah,
you don't even have to call it an introverted extrovert, because
yeah.
introverts are very
Y- y-
capable of socializing with people, and in fact they need it just like everybody else,
yes,
but you need your recharge time because
yes,
it wears you out.
yes.
Introverts recharge alone and use a lot of energy in social interactions. Extroverts
Mhm.
recharge with social interaction and become depressed in solitude.
And,
So
and that was
yeah,
the point I was getting to, is if you're more of an extroverted person and you have just been, you know, piled with work and life and kids and home and whatever, and you haven't had that outlet that recharges your batteries, well, then maybe you do need a girls' night out just to recharge your batteries,
mhm.
And so you come home and you are in a much better mood. You are in a much better mental space. So now all of a sudden, that does get the juices flowing, as she's saying.
Well, we're going to talk about the dudes next week, but I'll tell you from the male side of that, the guys' night out, a lot of women are worried about that too.
Mhm.
It allows guys to do the bonding that you don't do with a woman.
Yep.
You go do stuff together. You go hang out. You go drink. You go shoot the shit and make fun of people. Sometimes you get in a fight, that kind of stuff. And it's the complete opposite, because it's male bonding versus female bonding. A lot of
Mhm.
times the guys that don't need guys night out, they go hunting together.
Mhm.
We go fishing together, me and you.
Mhm.
We're going to doing something together. That's how
Not
guys
a lot of
bond.
catching, but a lot of fishing.
Yeah. Well, I catch bait. Okay, so let's get back to the video so we can make this at least somewhat not 3 hours.
Maybe like the stress of the day, you've opened your body for a receptive experience. And then when you join your partner and you're at 25, touch does feel good. Kissing is fun. And then you can get to 60 and, be on your happy.
It's about warming up. For the guys, I would advise not having an orgasm
Mm-hmm.
if they're trying to do this, because sometimes they're done, they're spent.
Yeah,
Right.
you're right. That's
Yeah.
a good
You
point.
can't waste all the bullets.
No, no.
Right.
Yeah. So that I think is really smart homework.
I
And
appreciate that they don't cut.
I often say to people, good sex isn't for the lazy. I believe that completely.
Ah.
I believe that completely. So this is a really important part of maintaining.
I might back up a second. That line was important, and I think I made it kind of less so by talking over it.
You're trying to do this, because sometimes they're done, they're spent.
Yeah,
Right.
you're right. That's
Yeah.
a good
You
point.
can't waste all the bullets.
No,
This line coming up here.
no.
Right.
Yeah. So that I think is really smart homework. And I often say to people, good sex isn't for the lazy.
Good sex isn't for the lazy.
Mhm.
That line I remember sticking with me.
Yeah.
That was actually the line where I was like, oh yeah, Heath has to listen to this one, and that's when I sent it to you.
Yeah, and you called it, hey, this is your homework for
Yeah.
next time. And that's another thing that jumped out at me with this video, much like with the car analogy, is that doesn't apply just to sex, but I think she is making that point, though indirectly, because that's not the focus of this particular talk, but she is kind of making the point indirectly that relationships are not for the lazy.
Mhm.
And this is a
Well,
big
and sex
part of
being
the
a major
relationship.
part of the relationship. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it if you want the good parts of a relationship, then you need to do the work to have a good whole relationship.
I believe that completely.
Ah.
I believe that completely. So this is a really important part of maintaining an exciting sex life over time, is you've got to take some matters into your own hands,
so to speak.
Yeah. And do your part, get yourself to 25 miles per hour.
Yeah.
and then see how that changes things, because it will. It will change.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So, but how do you handle it? It's like a lot of couples, they want sex to be spontaneous, right? And so spontaneous means like you never quite know when the other partner's ready to initiate,
Right.
or that they do initiate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, couple things.
Yeah.
One is, I say about that, if they're insistent on spontaneous sex, I say to the partner that usually one person needs a little more warming up than the other, right? I say to the one that needs a little more warming up, you don't have to tell your partner when you're doing your foreplay for your foreplay. Get yourself warmed up and then come on to your partner, and to your partner it's spontaneous. Like, they don't know that you've just spent the last 15.
The problem with that is, and I don't remember if they address it here, but is if you're the one that needs more warming up, but what if that's the one that says they need more warming up is also the one that's saying they need spontaneous?
Yes, they
And
don't address it here, which could be an issue.
because I know they do say something to the extent of, if you're the low libido partner, then you should do the warming up.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I kind of what you're saying is, what if you're the low libido because you really want the spontaneity? Well, that's now you're
Well-
adding levels of complication to things.
Well, but oh no, but okay, so I'm gonna refine that statement that you just made. What if you're the low libido partner, but you have an ideal of spontaneity?
Mhm.
Doesn't mean spontaneity is working for you. It
That's a good
means you
point.
think that's the way it should be.
Well, now where
We might be
I
able to back off from the video because
yeah,
I
I think
think
we
they
can
kind of
stop
just
the video here
yeah, they just repeat
because
themselves a lot now after this.
she kind of repeats her points there, and I think you've just segued me into my biggest problem with the video, which is that um all the points they make here are great. Obviously, these are two professionals, as we set up, of not just with the credentials, but with the experience, uh, and the cachet to, to go along with that. But it feels like this video is for mature couples. And I don't mean old people. I mean people who have some years into a relationship and have some years of life experience.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I would say anybody who's reached the point where honeymoon phase is over. I would say that that's who they're reaching to, because yeah, this could be your 40 years married and they haven't had sex in 5 years kind of couple. But it also could be the, wow, sex was great, but what happened? And you're
Yeah.
3 years into your marriage.
But what you just said is, I think, a major problem if you're talking to younger people about this of, oh, the spark is gone, and you're trying to explain to them, no, that's just, as she puts it, that's just Mother Nature doing her thing. This is just how life is. But as you said, you have this ideal that specifically sex or relationship in general, or the way my partner is supposed to treat me, you have this ideal, and nothing is ever going to match the ideal. That's life.
Well, and add to that the pressures of things like Hollywood, right? Hallmark movies and all of these things that go into it.
Yes.
And yeah, spontaneity is a big thing there. It's, the guy from the town that the woman went to the big city and came back to when she was engaged to the high-powered lawyer, because the new guy was spontaneous and he was down to earth and yeah. So we get this romantic, but the problem is our idea of that romantic is what works in the new relationship. Because what's new, spontaneity and newness and novelty all go together. Well, now you got 2 kids, a job, a house, and, responsibilities, and your book club and the PTO and, all of these things. You got to do it different because life's different.
And then you add to that my big concern here, and why we've talked so much about youngsters, and I've said repeatedly, holy cow, I'm glad I met my wife when I did, because I would just the idea of trying to meet someone and have a meaningful relationship in this day and age amongst the youngsters is terrifying, because we have so warped, as we've said before, toxic masculinity has become warped because there is this train of thought that is basically masculinity is toxic. And the way we have kind of defined it and exemplified it culturally, yeah, it actually has become toxic. But the same thing with femininity, ladies, which is part of the problem. And so I would wonder, my question to her would be, okay, you know, as we
I would say they got out of their natural state.
Mhm,
Because what we call toxic masculinity,
mhm.
aggression, overprotectionism, especially when it comes to your female partner, uh, those are the two that come to for this discussion, come to the top of my mind. Those were useful at one point in time because you had to be aggressive to be in nature, fight off wild animals, go hunting, protect your we didn't call it a spouse then because marriage wasn't an institution, but your partner from other men who were going to kill you and rape them and rape the woman and probably kill your children so they didn't have to raise your children in the process. Those were all things that were useful at one point in time, but they're not quite useful now. So that's what we call toxic masculinity, or what we should be calling toxic masculinity. But the problem is we threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mhm.
All the other things that lead up to that we can still do, earn a good living, you know, uh, be manly enough to defend your family if you get mugged in the street, that kind of stuff. That's all been thrown out with it. You, you know, having the gall to say, when she says, I want to leave, and you say, baby, it's cold outside, trying to have a little charm, all of that is called, baby, it's cold outside is called rape culture now.
Yes. It used to be a prime example of the art of seduction. And
Well,
and
not even
now,
just seduction, just, hey, I'm going to try because you're worth it.
yeah, look, even that we have to rephrase, because seduction is itself a dirty word, and it
Mm-hmm.
used to not be. So, okay, the art of romance, because the S word is toxic now, is problematic. It's, to your point, is the problem is that there has been a growing strain of thought that says either those natural things, that evolutionary psychology you talk about, either doesn't exist, is wrong, or shouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even in femininity, there was a commercial a long time ago. In the only reason I know about this commercial, because it is actually before my time, was my clients were talking about it this morning because apparently there was a song that was catchy in it, and the client's daughter heard somebody else singing that song, and she's like, "Oh, my parents used to sing me that song because it was catchy from the thing," and it was a very feminist at the time song in the 70s that was, I can bring home the bacon and I can still make my man the bacon because he's a man and he deserves it, kind of thing. That's the message of the song. So it was very feminist at the time of, I can bring home the bacon too because I can work now. I can be, I can do all these things. But it was very feminine and nurturing. I can make my man some bacon. And so now the feminists now are like, that's horrible and misogynist. And it was like, what's wrong with having both? You're
Yeah.
you're tossing the baby out with the bathwater again with, why can't I, if isn't it a good thing that I think I have a man that deserves
Yes.
something like
Yeah.
that? I mean, you should want that as a wife, or as as a whatever, as a girlfriend or whatever. You should want that. And then the man should be like, yeah, go do your thing, girl. But I love it when you make me bacon. And she can say, I love it when you walk on the street side. And if you don't know what that means, you need some lessons from your dad.
Mhm.
When you walk on the street side, I love it when, even though I have the money, you cover the check. How about that? I don't cover the check because you can't. I cover the check because I love you.
Mhm.
I open the door not because you can't.
Because
I
I
open
want
the
to.
door because I want to. and
I want to
she,
do for you.
and on the other side, I don't make the bacon because you make me. I make the bacon because I appreciate you.
Mhm.
And why can't we have that again? That's what we're fighting for. Second wave feminism. That's what we're fighting for here, which is apparently right wing conspiracy theories these days.
It's the meme of the dude standing in the center, and all of a sudden the person
Yeah.
on the left just sprints a mile down the other way, and it's like, when did you become so radical? Well, funny story.
Yeah. And, I do most of the cooking around the house here,
Mhm.
but it's because I love to cook.
Mhm.
It's not because oh, my wife makes money, so I better cook the dinner. I love to cook.
Yeah.
When I was the one working 15 hours a day, I still did most of the cooking. I just did it a different way. I'd make it all on Sunday and we just ate from the fridge the rest of the time because we were all busy. It's yeah, you as a couple, there are feminine and masculine roles, and you naturally slide into them. And when you do that, you end up doing the things you want to do for the other person. And the other person ends up appreciating it more than if you try to do the thing that they want to do.
That's kind of the, for I think wrapping it up, closing thought here of the meta idea from the specific example that um doctors Marianne and Abraham were talking about here. They're talking about a specific
See, I would
example,
say
but you can
Morgenthaler and
extrapolate that
Brandon
outward.
because I would use their last names, but
Well, I couldn't remember their last names, and it's in
Abraham
the title.
Morgenthaler and
Yeah, in the title they have their first names. But anyway, they're talking about a specific, but again, you can extrapolate this out to the general of, if you want these good things, if you want a good relationship, then you're going to have to work at it. And are you willing to do that?
mhm.
In the same way that, we have talked quite a bit since the beginning of the year about New Year's resolutions and new skills, and advancements in your life and in yourself. And okay, you've got to do that.
Mhm.
Set up your checklist, set up your outline of how you're going to accomplish that, and then do it.
So the last thing I wanted to pull in here, since we're going to kind of pull this to a close, was the activities to the all-day foreplay probably have to have a certain pattern or
Mm.
probably in general have to have a certain pattern where, for if you're a man and you're wanting to turn on your female partner, you probably need to do something oxytocin based,
Hmm.
which is
Witchcraft.
it's a kind, yeah. So we're getting into the neuroscience here. It's a bonding experience, but it's not a bonding experience in this. So both of these are bonding experiences, but it's not the same as with a guy. What you need is something that, so women release oxytocin when they breastfeed, right? Or after they've had a child because they're nurturing their child. What you have to do is nurture your wife, right? Or your partner or your spouse or your girlfriend. What you have to do is do things like listen to her. But I would add to this, since we're talking sex, listen to her with an element of physical contact. Hold her hand. Have your hand on her thigh. You can even slightly make it sexual on her thigh, you know, on the back of her shoulder or something. Physical contact while she feels heard and gets basically comforted by you. So okay, so I just came. That is the word. You need to comfort her all day. So even while you're out, when you're doing something, you have dinner or something, you need to make her feel comfortable. You need to make her feel protected. You need to make her feel all of these things that release that chemical. On the flip side, if you want to turn your man on, if your man's the low libido one, you got to do something together. You got to accomplish something together. Vasopressin, you got to do a project together. You want to get a guy turned on? Think of a project around the house and have it and help him with it. Or if you see him doing a project around the house, figure out how you can help him with it and flirt with him the whole time you're doing it. So add the sexual to the activity. So with her, you're making her feel comfortable, feel protected, and you're making a physical contact that is not quite there, but is a little bit sexual. Again, the hand on the thigh is probably the easiest one. Don't slide in and start getting too close, just a nice comfortable distance from anything that matters. But also do the things where she feels protected and heard and valuable in your life. And then the guy, help him with something and flirt the whole time. Those to me, those seem like pretty damn good recipes.
Yeah, I think that is probably a lot better advice than you're going to get from most couples counseling,
Yes.
as evidenced by the statistics of couples counseling.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you're talking divorce counseling. That's, I mean, as what Adam Lane Smith, what as he says, as a couples counselor in divorce counseling, the statistic that Heath was talking about was a 5% success rate. It's because they're there as their last gasp of basically telling the other person off and being able to look at themselves in the mirror and say, we got a professional involved. I tried.
Yeah, they're already checked out. Yeah.
But actually that plays into the video too, because she's a sex therapist.
Don't check out. This is how you don't get there in the first place.
Yeah, but she has a higher success rate because what did she say? When people come into my office, they're already on the on-ramp because they're trying to have better sex. So she says when they come into my office, it's actually easier because they're already at 20. Because they wouldn't be here if they weren't trying to have better sex. And so the inverse with divorce counseling, they wouldn't be here if they weren't already ready.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, they need to see her before they see him. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the conclusion here, you have your concluding remarks and I'll give a overall conclusion of what we did.
No, I think I've said what I've said, and next time we're going to kind of stay in the same ballpark, but we're gonna focus more on the male side of it. Because of what I ranted about, my mini rant about the destruction of masculinity and the kind of labeling of by a not insignificant swath of society of any masculinity has become toxic masculinity.
Okay. So what I would like to conclude with is what you get with this channel. Okay. So if you made it this far and you don't subscribe or you just kind of gave us a shot today, we just listened to Dr. Brandon, who's the female doctor there, because that was kind of based around her. That was her show. He pulled some stuff in, but that was her show. She's a clinical psychologist. Okay. I am not a clinical psychologist. I am a scientist trained in psychology. So I'm bringing what's underneath what she's saying in this conversation to kind of flesh it out more for everybody. That's why it takes longer than her 12-minute thing, because she's telling you, okay, this is the way it is, and this is what I see, and this is what you should do. Where we're kind of bringing in and say, okay, this is what underlies all that. And so now you can take a first principles approach to it, because even the best clinical psychologists won't have the right answer for everybody, especially in 12 minutes. And so, yeah, so if you can go with that and you want to learn more and get on a deeper understanding of some of these things that the clinicians are doing, that's where we come in. And when it comes to politics and history, and that, Heath is like lead, and I keep him on track. And when we have these kind of things, he keeps me from running off on tangents and, just talking and talking and talking and talking, and or just forgetting what I'm saying. And he kind of brings me back into the conversation because personality types and stuff. So yeah, that's what we bring. If you liked it, subscribe, send us to a friend, and we'll see you next time. We'll talk dudes. We'll talk dudes next time. Same kind of subject, but we'll get into that adolescent angst again and
Yes.
what's struggling with. And I love that you sent me that video that I did my homework. I watched your video too, because I have already said all that. I just didn't do it in 32 minutes. I did it in like 3 2-hour episodes. So we might be able to condense it down a little bit and, kind of shed some light on that subject as well.
All right. We'll see y'all then.